Okay. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to the sixth session. So we have with us Dr. Malvika Safaya ma'am. She is a doctorate in chemical engineering with over 10 years of experience in the academic and EPCM environment, specializing in water treatment, oil and gas, and mining industries. Currently, she is serving as a water treatment coordinator at Conuma Resources Limited, located in British Columbia, Canada. Her job profile emphasizes focusing on process optimization, compliance monitoring, and biochemical reactor operations. She has an extensive experience in pre-feed, feed, and detailed engineering design for sustainable aviation fuels, carbon capture, and refinery revamp projects. Adept at handling multiple projects, implementing digital transformation, and optimizing industrial processes for enhanced efficiency. Ma'am is passionate about developing innovative solutions for water treatment and sustainable energy transitions. I invite ma'am to please address the session.
Good evening, everyone. And
Good evening, ma'am.
I'm sharing my screen now. Please let me know if it's visible.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Just trying to present it in the. I hope it's visible in the form of a
Yes,
PowerPoint
yes.
presentation. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So today I'm going to present on biochemical reactor declining industrial wastewater treatment. And it's a part of, I'm presenting it at the faculty development program today. And I myself am as working as a water treatment coordinator at the Conuma Resources Limited, which is a coal mining industry located in British Columbia. So the very first picture is of the mine site and it has been taken by me. And you can see the two rainbows kind of being shown in the picture. It's kind of getting reflected in the sky as well. So going ahead, again, the picture on the side is the mine site picture. And starting with understanding what is a semi-passive water treatment. So it's a treatment that replicates the natural processes and mechanisms to treat the mine impacted water. Going forward, I'll be utilizing this acronym like MIW that will be related to mine impacted water. So water treatment, it utilizes electricity, addition of chemicals, substrate replacement, and day-to-day human intervention. Some of the examples are constructed wetland treatment systems, bioreactors. Also, there are a type of bioreactors like gravel bed bioreactors, mulch reactors, solid phase reactors, and moving bed biofilm reactors. That is also known as MBBRs. And in situ treatment, including pit lakes, saturated rock fillings, tailing ponds, and flooded underground mine pools. Now, bioreactors, they are kind of a replica of the wetlands, and so they are also known as constructed wetlands many times. Like while selecting a semi-passive water treatment, there are some performance liabilities involved. There are some risks that needs to be considered. The very first one of them is like the maximum contaminant absorption capacity of the plants, because whatever inflow will be coming into the plant daily, it will be kind of be having different contaminant loadings every day. Then the second is the robustness of the water treatment technology under bad weather or extreme conditions. Now, usually the biochemical reactors, they are all exposed wetland systems. So they are always exposed to the environment. Hence, they can see the extreme climatic conditions, extreme summers, extreme winters, also extreme rainfalls. So the robustness or the sturdiness of the water treatment plant is very important. The short, medium, and long-term chemical stability of the extracted contaminants and the possibility of releasing them. Again, it's a very important thing. The contaminants that we are trying to remove, they should become stable. Like if we are releasing them in the environment, they should become stable chemically. Now, why biochemical reactors are so popular in the mine site? So the image itself shows you a very basic structure of how a biochemical reactor looks, and it has a limestone layer, an organic matter layer. The water is being filled into it and it's kind of getting filtered out. So it's a very simplistic design. BCRs can be constructed at remote mining sites with simpler equipment and materials than many other treatment options. They also require very less maintenance. They are gravity-driven systems and they require very less energy. And unless and until if a pump is being used, then those pumps can also be powered by solar or wind energy. The materials for the BCR often can be obtained locally, which promotes reuse and decreases the transportation needs. Now, all these are well said and true, but in many cases and situations, sometimes it's really not as simple as it just looks like, and the pointers that we have started with. But yes, because mine sites are mostly remotely located, so these are the factors that kind of makes the biochemical reactor a very suitable option for water treatment. The coal mining industry. The Canadian coal mining industry is basically distributed into thermal and metallurgical. The one that I work in is the metallurgical one, and we are into producing steel making coal. The mine impacted water, MIW, is contaminated by mining and mineral processing activities. MIW is usually acidic and contains metals, sulfate, and other inorganic contaminants. Now, these mines are subjected to provincial laws, regulations, and mine-specific permits. So, a brief background is like Canada, just like India, is also having many states. Here, they don't call the states, they call them as provinces. So, each state has its own rules and regulations as well. So we always call them as the provincial laws. But when it comes as the whole country and the regulation from this side, we call it as federal. Whereas in India, we call it like the national laws and then we call the state laws. But here it's like federal laws and then the provincial laws. So again, as you can see, there are like 35 federal acts and regulations that a mine has to kind of compliance with. And once operating, coal mines are then subjected to various provincial permits and approvals, including the effluent quality standards established through the approval processes. The one that I'm working at is the Brule mine. Now, already Kanuma is having around 4 mines. It's a Wolverine, Willow, Brule, and Quintet, which was newly acquired. And a very recently acquired one is the Peace River mine. And out of all these mines, currently Brule is having the main biochemical reactors as a functional one for, I think, past so like around in 2015. And like they are whatever gets started like pilot scale or a large scale, it gets started at the Brule and then it gets implied at all the other mine sites. So Kanuma Coal Resources Limited has one of the open pit coal mine site called the Brule mine located in the northeastern British Columbia. To meet the water parameters, compliance with the Environmental Management Act permits 17679, a semi-passive water treatment, that is biochemical reactor, was constructed in 2015 with an upgrade in 2017. Now treated effluent is discharged like whatever effluent we are finally getting released, it should meet the permit compliance and requirements, and then it gets discharged into a blind creek, which is a very small river tributary which gets joined to the main Sakunka River. That's the main river body out there. And the very 4 parameters are of major concern for us when discharging this effluent. So selenium, total suspended solids, that's TSS, nitrates, and total phosphorus. In the image on the side, you can see the very first, like at the bottom, whatever you can see that as a brown pond kind of thing, that's one of the reactor. The another one is somewhere down the road and followed by the 2 polishing ponds or aeration ponds. And the very major big water body that you can see at the end is the main sediment pond out there. So this is like another, I guess it's like a satellite, like kind of Google image kind of thing that they have prepared. So it's like the whole semi-passive water treatment, it comprises of the 5 ponds. So as I showed you in the earlier picture, you could see now with the names is the BCR2 is somewhere a little up on the mountain. Going down to the mountain, there is BCR1, followed by the 2 aeration ponds. So one of them is the smaller one is aeration pond 2. The bigger one is the aeration pond 1. So BCR1 and the aeration one was made first, and then BCR2 and the aeration pond 2 was prepared later on afterwards. So the connection is such that the main sediment pond is the source of the water to both the BCR1 and the BCR2. Once the water gets treated into BCR1 and BCR2, it goes to the aeration ponds. And from aeration ponds, if I don't know, you can see this, if you can see my cursor, then this particular line goes to the your MSP, the main sediment pond, and from the main sediment pond, the water is finally gets discharged into the Blind Creek and finally into the Sakunka River. Now, when it goes to the Blind Creek, it's somewhere out here. So this water body somewhere out here is the Blind Creek. There are also some sampling points out there where we kind of sample and ensure that, you know, the
Excuse
water
me,
is getting the compliance.
ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
I have got many messages that slides are not moving and slides are not visible. Actually,
Okay.
the slides are visible and they are moving. In my system, it is showing.
Okay.
Uh, Dr. Rotliwala, sir, can you please?
Yes, yes, yeah. I can see this. Slides are moving. There is no issue with this slide.
The slide is moving actually.
Yes, yes. It's clear.
Yes,
It's
so
clear.
I have got many messages in the chat box. So those
No,
who
no.
are
It's
unable to see the slides, you all are requested to click on the red leave button and then again join the meeting by clicking on the link which has been sent to you. By that way, you may be able to see the slides. Okay, thank you. Ma'am,
Yeah.
please continue.
Yeah, no worries. Dr. Hira sir, can you see my cursor as well?
yes, yes, yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
It's
okay,
ma'am, we
visible.
okay.
can.
It's
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
perfectly visible.
so yeah,
No
so
issue
that
with the slide.
like if I'm showing guiding through the diagram, I just ensuring that people can see. And
Yes, it is
yeah,
visible.
okay. Continuing forward, yeah. So like we have these two ponds and they are interconnected to the aeration pond. Finally, it goes to, I believe that all these lines, they are not so much synchronized, but you know, this whole system has undergone changes many times. So at times, like whatever images I'm having it, some of them are very old. So they are not like properly updated as well. But the idea is like I'll be explaining in the upcoming slides like how this whole system is kind of functioning with this main sediment pond. So let us go to the biochemical reactors, the design part. Like the reactor cell, on the side, you can see that it's a vertical flow bioreactor system. And I'll be explaining that as well. So going through this, like the reactor cell media for BCR1, it consists of a layer of limestone at the bottom, the gray one out here, and a mixed layer consisting of 20 to 35% limestone, 25 to 40% wood chips, and 30 to 40% hay, all natural media. That is your green layer. And then it's like a 30 to 40% hay in the middle, and then an insulating layer of the hay on the top, which is the yellow part we are seeing. Now, the BCR2 was developed using the same materials, but with a slightly different configuration, which I'll be explaining ahead. Water enters the BCR through a manifold pipe situated in the upper interval of the BCR and nested in the mixed media. So you can see that this particular red line is like going through this particular green mixed media. Okay, and water then flows horizontally through the mixed media layer across the reactor and then downward into an underlying limestone drain layer. Water discharges from the BCR through a effluent manifold situated within the limestone layer. So the drainage lines, which is the indicated by the blue color, is in the limestone area, and you can see the outflow. Now, to limit the possibility of water forming flow paths through the bottom layer of the limestone and thus not receiving the full treatment, the limestone for BCR2 is positioned surrounding both the inlet and outlet pipes. So let me explain this last point very fully. So if you see, you have water inflowing into this mixed media, which shows like through this pipeline header, and then it is getting released. So these pipes are all perforated and the kind of water gets released from here. So if it's getting released from the top, from the insulating layer, so it's kind of getting down vertically into this mixed layer, flowing horizontally around and then collecting into the blue line drains, which is located in your limestone layer, and then goes out. Now, Why the limestone layer? The limestone layer is known to reduce the acidic nature of the water. So hence the limestone layer is particularly of lot of importance. And when they said this last line that, the inlet and the outlet is also in the limestone layer. So what has happened in the new design, which was the BCR2, what they did was, like, you can see this particular inlet is coming from this mixed media, but in the new design, this particular line is coming from this, like this gray limestone media has been raised up to here. So what happens, this line will enter through the gray limestone area and then kind of forward into the mixed media. While leaving out also, this line will be inside the limestone area. So they kind of just added more limestone so that, there is no chance of like water getting only lodged into the mixed layer. Like everything that gets treated is getting out through the blue line, drainage line. So there are two types of biochemical reactors, like vertical flow and the horizontal flow. They had worked around with the horizontal flow, but they didn't find that much effectiveness. And also, when you are going for a horizontal flow, it's like mostly you need more of the volume, but with the vertical flow bioreactor, you need more of a surface area. That's the difference between them. So yeah, I hope. Okay, so in this particular image, you can see like how initially the biochemical reactor is made. So first of all, they kind of place a liner onto it. So the BCR's ability to effectively operate depends upon the steady and predictable flow rates through the reactor. Extra flow input, which would cause an emergency spillway discharge, should only occur rarely and never during the normal flow conditions. The liners, which you can see in the image, prevent the groundwater in general from infiltrating the BCRs. The treated water would then be discharged to a polishing pond to be aerated and polished before discharging to the MSP pond. Perforated HDPE pipe is utilized for the inlet and the outlet manifolds and covered with the limestone, which I showed you in the past slide, so previous slide. And a separation geotextile layer is placed on top of the limestone layer to prevent the fine material from moving into the limestone voids. So in the previous slide, this particular limestone gray layer is also having a geotextile material on top of it, so that the all that hay particulates solid material doesn't get kind of trapped into this limestone layer. Yeah. So this particular line you can see is that the outlet line, which was this out here. So when it is like kind of getting drained out, there is an agri drain on top of it. So water levels within the BCR, they are controlled by the stop logs. These are the stop logs. It's kind of a weird design out here at the bottom. And the stop logs are added so to control the water levels in the BCR. From the agri drain, the reactor cell effluent flows into the aeration pond. The aeration pond effluent is discharged into the reactor cell bypass channel and flows via an open channel into the southwestern corner of the MSP. And this final discharge of the BCR system then flows the north through the MSP sediment curtain. At the northwestern corner of the main sediment pond, water is pumped back into the inlet end of the BCR1 cell reactor, with the remaining flow discharged to the Blind Creek over the MSP spillway. So this is kind of like, which I'll be again explaining in the slides further, that after the BCR, there is like the aeration pond and then the MSP pond, and how like water is kind of flowing from this particular discharge site to the aeration pond and then finally to the main sediment pond. I'll be covering the last two lines more into the other slides, but this particular slide was explaining more of like it was to show that how exactly the agri drain works. Agri drain is very important in both of the BCR1 and BCR2. Only those two reactors are having this agri drain. This kind of regulates the water inside the BCR, and it also is like the sampling point station also, like where we kind of sample like the water quality is finally coming, like it's properly treated from the BCRs. So the design parameters for any BCR to be effective, you have to have steady flow rates You have to have a pH levels maintained and the loading rates. When we say loading rates means the contaminant content into that particular water which is coming from the mine site. So total metal loading rate is a function of flow, and this whole thing affects the BCR size. If the pH of the mine impacted water is low, then you need an increased passive BCR size. Mine impacted water to be in the reactive part of the system, for the treatment, it needs to be in the part of the system for some time, which is also known as the retention time. And this particular contact time can, generally range between 8 to 48 hours in a BCR. But here in this particular biochemical reactor, we were having the retention time as the 12 hours. So going ahead. Now, this particular layout kind of gives you a better idea of how the BCR actually looks and feels and how it's working. So as you can see, the pipeline is coming from the main sediment pond. The main sediment pond is the source of the inlet water to these biochemical reactors. So it kind of goes into here. And as you could have seen in that particular diagram, so the very first header lines will be where the standing vertical pipes are there, from where the water is getting released into the hay media. The vertical standing pipes are also known as stand pipes. They are also the points where one can take the samples as well in case, the system has to be analyzed. Then finally, there is that particular drain area from where the water is kind of getting discharged, and somewhere here is your agri drain, right? But another thing, the water is also being discharged through the two submersible pumps, which is somewhere located out here. So there are like two lines going out from here, and they particularly the outlet lines from this particular side, the discharge pumps, and from the agri drain, somewhere connect around in this particular manhole side, and then they get transferred to the aeration pond. So these three lines basically converge at this point, and finally it goes out to the aeration pond. So all these pointers are basically the submersible pumps, the agri drain. The both of them are like to control the water level inside the BCR. So both of them are the junction points of how, the main parameters, how to control the water inside the biochemical reactor. So trying to maintain the level. Now, another point is like in this particular BCR, so this particular design, it implies to the BCR2. Whereas in the BCR biochemical reactor 1, there has been a semi-permeable membrane placed out somewhere here. So when the water kind of leaves, the idea is to control the sediments, and the water goes from this particular line to the agri drain. Now, the addition of a semi-permeable membrane kind of, steadies, or I should say it lowers the flow rate a lot. So what happens is like in the BCR2, when you remove the stop logs from the agri drain, the water level goes sharply, like it declines very sharply. But it doesn't happen same in the BCR1. In BCR1, there is a semi-permeable membrane structure out here, which kind of restricts the flow. So even if, we are removing all the stop logs from the agri drain, there won't be a radical decline into the system. So water will get slowly released out, but it will not empty the pond immediately. Right, so that's the difference between these two ponds. Now, the water levels in the reactor cells are used in conjunction with the flow rates to establish the reactor cell's hydraulic retention time. There are two main reasons for adjusting the water levels inside the biochemical reactor. So the first is due to the flow increase or the decrease, like whatever is coming like inflow. The second reason is to adjust the ORP, which is oxidation reduction potential, to an optimal range for the treatment performance. The effectiveness of the BCR will be monitored through the lab data and the field parameters. And we are taking the water samples daily. We are going to measure the how the treatment is going on. But if you really want to see an immediate response or an immediate like analysis of the biochemical reactor, whether it is functioning properly, then it is oxidation reduction potential value that gives you the an almost accurate estimate of how the reactors are performing. So if the ORP is increased to above minus 200 millivolt, an assessment will be made on whether the flow rate should be decreased to allow the system to regenerate. So going beyond minus 200 millivolt is not desirable. for a BCR to be functioning effectively. Now let us see the BCR treatment further. The breakdown of the organic media over time, it promotes reducing conditions. So ORP will be like, it should be like lesser than -100. Basically, ideally in our case, it should be like between -100 to -150 to -200 is where we consider that the BCR is working effectively. Under those conditions, the selenium in the form of selenate and selenite, it's reduced to the elemental selenium and or selenium sulfide compounds through the microbially mediated processes. Now, the microbially mediated processes also promote conditions for the reduction of nitrogen in the form of nitrate to nitrogen gas. All this kind of whatever is final compounds are being formed, they get stuck somewhere into the media here. So elemental selenium and selenium sulfides are retained in the organic media, while treated water passes through the media to the aeration pond. The BCR is designed for a flow rate of 340 gallons per minute, and the design selenium removal rate is 0.22 milligram per cubic foot per day. Now, this is designed flow rate, and we ensure to maintain like around 300 GPM almost every day. That is like we try to maintain that much amount. But there can always be fluctuation in the operations. Now, BCR1 and BCR2, they receive the influent from the main sediment pond. The main sediment pond receives the contact water from various waste rock dumps, material stockpiles, and was originally intended to retain the seepage and the surface water runoff to promote the settlement of suspended solids prior to the discharge to the Blind Creek. Now, the capacity of the ponds was like, is the storage capacity of BCR1 is somewhere around 6,020 meter cube. The capacity of BCR2 is 6,140 meter cube. Aeration pond 1 that was originally formed was having 2,310 meter cube, and aeration pond is having a slightly lesser volume, like it's smaller than the aeration pond 1, which is 1,120 meter cube, which was also visually, like you can see it from the image also, that AP2 is smaller than AP1. And the reason is probably that they wanted, so AP1 and BCR1 were already constructed, and BCR2 and BCR2 and AP2 were formed later on. That was the available space that they were getting out there, because it's like they need the gravity flow as well. So on the mountain, like if they have prepared these ponds, they had a very less space for available for aeration pond too. The storage capacity for the main sediment pond is somewhere around 102,000 meter cube, which is the very largest capacity out there. So now I can explain you guys like how aeration ponds and the main sediment pond work. The aeration pond, it serves the two primary purposes. The oxygen is diffused in the pond to re-entrain the oxygen in the anaerobic effluent from the reactor cell. Fine suspended solids in the reactor cell effluent, including elemental selenium and selenium sulfide compounds, get settled before the final discharge into the system. So whatever has come through the effluent discharge from the BCR, we still allow it to get settled into the aeration pond further. Aeration pond pump provides a continuous steady flow water that is not meant to discharge, and is recycled back to the aeration pond to ensure that the water level in the aeration pond remains at a steady state. There can always be some fluctuation happening around in the BCRs, but there is always a recycle line in the aeration pond to ensure that the water levels in the aeration pond remain steady, and the aerator pump is like the aerator is continuously being working, and it is run continuously to ensure that the oxygen levels are maintained in this particular pond. And discharge flows are regulated based on the flows through the BCRs. The main sediment pond, which is very huge, the image on the right side is like the actual main sediment pond, while you are passing through it is so big, like there is a whole road developed from the side. The main sediment pond serves many purposes in the expanded water treatment system. It serves as a primary collection body of raw water as well as a dilution body for the system effluent if needed. A series of ditches, subdrains, and diversions have been constructed to divert the water from the north dump to the MSP and separate from BCR1 treatment and its components. So basically, the main sediment pond was initially developed to collect whatever water was getting released from the mine site. So basically it was a dump area also, you can say, for all the water on the mine site, but it also serves as kind of a pre-treatment pond. So for the water to be treated in the BCR, usually the very first step has to be the pre-treatment, so that we allow the sediments to kind of settle down. We don't want much of the sediments to enter into the BCRs. So the main sediment pond works like that. So there is kind of a partition being made into the main sediment pond. And these partitions act in such a way, like one part is kind of giving influent to the BCR. The other part is taking all the effluent from the aeration ponds, and it allows the water to fully get settled, and then it kind of gets released into the blind creek. So major components of the main sediment pond include the influent and the effluent gravity discharge channels, and also 2 effluent pumps and 1 influent pump. So these are the parameters, like they are of highest concern, because we have to ensure that the effluent that is being discharged meets the permit and compliance. So the very first is TSS, the nitrate, the total phosphorus, total selenium, dissolved oxygen, ORP, total organic carbon, and biochemical oxygen demand. The collection and the interpretation of the water quantity and quality at various sites throughout the water treatment system are critical in monitoring the system performance. All these parameters, we have to ensure that when the water reaches finally the blind creek, it should kind of match these levels. We cannot exceed these particular levels. These are like given by the government, and if like we kind of exceed them, we have to inform the environmental agency that we have kind of, like, today the water has flown to the creek, and if it kind of exceeds this, for example, total selenium 10 microgram per liter, if it has become 12, we have to inform that we have kind of exceeded it today, and like this information has to reach to them. So it's not like we have to monitor it every single day. And in case the compliance is not being met, we have to inform the government as well. So monitoring the ORP tracks the oxidizing and the reducing processes of the microbial and the biological communities established in the reactor. Higher ORP values indicate more oxidative conditions and preference for electron transfer from electron donors above the range for nitrate and selenite reduction, which could be related to the hydraulic overloading, highly oxygenated water entering the system, or short circuit in the biochemical reaction process. So usually when the ORPs are kind of getting changed, that is kind of the very first indication that something is not right happening in the system. Now, as I said earlier, the discharge, finally, when the water gets discharged from the BCR, the primary constitutes of the concern at the Brule mile and are nitrate, selenium, and phosphorus. Those three are the major ones. These parameters show the mine-related signatures in the mine discharges and at the compliance monitoring site, that is BCO1A in the Blind Creek. Now, BCO1A is the very major point. Like, that finally decides like what is the water that we are releasing into the main river. Based on acute and chronic toxicity test results, there is little evidence that the mine is affecting the aquatic life in the Sakunka River. The toxicity test results show no adverse effects were observed for the rainbow trout and Seriodaphnia dubia when exposed. I think those are the two fish types there. When exposed to the effluent taken from the sample location BCO1A. The findings of the toxicity testing were further confirmed, and there was no observed effects in the Sakunka River. Another major important factor out here, especially in Canada, is the climate. So there is like biochemical reactors, usually they need a very decent amount of temperature. It has to be like, in a proper warm 20-30 degrees Celsius when it works very effectively. Now imagine, as you can see in the picture, that's the condition when the winter sets in. So there's like a lot of cold and temperature dropping, and that kind of leads to a reduction in the performance. But so what we do is, like, the construction of the BCRs, it has to be larger and they have to be very deep. there has to be lot of this, the hay, that's the third layer we had seen on the top. It has to be like in a huge quantity. It has to insulate the whole surface. So that kinds of maintains the temperature inside. Then the heated influent flows. So all the influent that is coming into these BCRs, the pipelines are heat traced, and also these pipelines are being constructed like below the frost level. So especially in Canada, there has to be like on the land, from the land, there is some depth that is like they have already measured that that's the below the frost level. So there is some point in the land which will get frozen during these extreme climatic conditions. But below that, if they construct the whole pipeline and every structure that goes below the frost level, that kind of protects and ensures that the temperature remains, in stable conditions. And again, if we consider climatic conditions like high rainfalls, which is also observed here in the summertime, so you require equalization basins. So in this context, the BCR at this particular mine site, our equalization tank is the main sediment pond out here. Now, the maintenance part. The BCR system requires little maintenance, with the exception being the media density reduction of BCR cells, as well as the hay topping to provide insulation for the winter, and an additional carbon source as the nutrients are broken down. So as water is getting treated and all this mixed media, that will also kind of gets declined. It's getting utilized. So we have to kind of provide it, like we have to ensure that media is not getting reduced. So we always have to regenerate, provide more media to this particular ponds. So sediment accumulation may occur within the aeration ponds. And if the sediment is required, it is first tested prior to removal to determine the chemical composition to develop a pond sediment disposal plan that is submitted to the British Columbia Ministry, Mines and Petroleum Resources for approval prior to initiating the plan. So even if like whatever material has got like bad into this BCR, the mixed media, if we kind of take it out and replace it, whatever we take it out, we also have to inform to the ministry like where we have to dispose it. Similarly for the aeration ponds. Now in the aeration ponds, there is nothing like this media or hay, but there is a sedimentation accumulation going on. We have to remove that sediment also, and we have to come up with a plan every time when we are going for this disposal. Right now in this particular image, you can see that this is a biochemical reactor pond and it's a very topmost layer. They found that the mixed media was like completely now decomposed, I should say. It was like fully reduced, not effectively working. So they kind of removed it through the excavators, and now they are adding this particular new media which is being added to it. So this is in the BCR. In the aeration pond, there has to be the removal of the sediments. So it will be more like a whole soil formation, and that soil has to be removed. To maintain the optimum operating capacity of AP1 and AP2, the aeration ponds 1 and 2, periodical removal of sediment will be required. Removal of sediment from the aeration pond should be conducted when sediment accumulation monitoring data indicates about 40 to 60% of the original pond capacity has been filled. It's like every year, like twice a year, it is like ensured that, the ponds, the BCR, the aeration ponds, they are kind of being maintained and they are being checked. That if the filling capacity has also been like, finished, they have to remove the sediments. So twice a year, this check is being made. Now let us see the drawbacks of the BCR system. So a number of challenges have encountered during the implementation phases of the BCR system. The very first of these, it relates to the maintenance of constant influent flow into the BCR, which is very crucial for the operation of the BCR. There are times, so basically the inflow to the BCR, it comes from the main sediment pond, which is getting the dump of all the waters from the mine site. So it can always kind of change. There will always be, the loading will be different, the contaminants level will be different. Always ensuring that a constant influent flow, the MSP does that you get a constant influent flow to the BCR, but it is still a challenge, like what will be the contaminant loading every day. Moreover, in flow, concentrations of major parameters like selenium and nitrate can vary significantly, and this can also impact the removal success. In addition, the sediment buildup can compromise the operation of the system. Proper sediment removal prior to the water entering the BCR will mitigate this issue. So that's the reason like why we ensure that, the sediments are kind of removed from the inflow, like whatever feed will be entering into BCR, we have to ensure that that feed water is having very less of the sediments, because more sediments, that means it will be harming that mixed media, which is not very good. Finally, maintaining the microbial activity within the BCR is also a key factor. Now, the microbial activity needs a good temperature. And as we have seen, when the climate declines, like when there is a snow, there is a lower temperature, maintaining the microbial activity within the BCR is a bit of challenge. Improper media placement and compaction can cause preferential flow paths, decreasing the hydraulic retention time and the treatment efficiency of the BCR. The system improvisation was done like the very first improvisation that was done was that the inflow to both the BCRs will come from the main sediment pond. And that's the reason like we ensure that the sediments get, whatever are there stays in the main sediment pond. And so there is a bit of clear water entering into the BCR first. This reduced sediment inflow into the BCRs. A heat trace line has been installed from the main sediment pond to feed the BCR at a constant rate. And there is also a sediment curtain in the aeration pond to allow the microbes time to settle and accumulate. Factors important for BCR system adequacy, sequencing and flow control are crucial to the proper functioning of the BCR system. Sediment curtains help to reduce the sediment load to the aerator, and raised edges help to reduce the surface water runoff entering the BCR system. So it was also done like the BCRs, they have to have a raised boundaries, because when there is a rainfall, so all the regular water that is on the ground that can also kind of enter into the system, and which will disturb the system. To ensure that that doesn't happen, they have also kind of raised the BCR boundaries as well now, to ensure that the system is always like it's not disturbed. So though I can say that BCRs, they are like kind of open reactors, so it becomes a very tough task to ensure that they are not impacted by the surrounding areas. That's the major, I should say, the problem that BCRs face, is that they are open reactors and they are exposed to the climate, the weather, and the surrounding areas. There is also like all the wildlife that can also roam around. We have to ensure that the wildlife, we have seen that birds come around. There has been deer sightings and bears and everything. They kind of drink the water as well. So they had to kind of, increase it more, like the depth and the level has to be increased so that, surrounding factors don't impact it. So that's a tough task, controlling the BCRs. Now, why they are being decommissioned? So all over in the North America, the BCRs are kind of being decommissioned now. So they are on the verge of getting decommissioned, even at our site. So the reason being the maintenance cost. Like we say that earlier it was defined that the maintenance was not that much. But see, what happens is when the sediments are getting built up, in a year you have to look twice into it that there is no sediment formation. The hay media is proper. Now, such a huge biochemical reactor, a lot of hay and media has to be in the right proportions also. So there is a lot of labor being utilized in that. So it's not as cost effective as it was understood before. But what has also happened that there has been a stringent environmental regulations, which is kind of now, if you have to ensure that the BCR functioning every day properly, it then becomes a kind of a costly maintenance problem. Carbon footprint, there's a lot of that, but because you are disposing all that hay media and sediments, so you are kind of increasing the carbon footprint. Aging infrastructure, like many of the BCRs in North America have been built up about 20 years back. So now is the time they are just going for a new modern water treatment technologies. So declining market demand. Now, this particular one, the moving bed biofilm reactor. So, what has happened at our mine site? They have kind of developed a pilot scale plant, and they have been running it for past many months to see that if this thing works, they will be kind of decommissioning the BCRs fully. And they have also started the construction of a full scale plant of this moving bed biofilm reactor. Now, it's a pilot design which kind of treats 20 gallons per minute and uses microorganisms to convert the soluble forms of selenium to primarily selenate and selenite to elemental selenium, which is insoluble. So it is kind of doing the same thing as your BCRs. But now the MBBRs, they are a technology which was like kind of developed and perfected in the late 1900s. And they are this particular technology, it doesn't require a pre-treatment tank. So it's just like if you can see in this particular layout, the water is straight away added to a feed tank and it's being heated through a heat exchanger and then going to an influent mixed tank where you kind of adding some of the chemicals to ensure that there is a microbial activity and growth, and it goes then to these anaerobic MBBR tanks. Now both of these tanks, they have a plastic, I should say a plastic treatment materials. So they are like buoyant plastic media. The media in BCR was the hay media, but here it's just like small plastic circular stuff that, you know, kind of gives the surface area for the microorganisms to react. So those particular plastic media are giving that particular surface area for the treatment. Now, again, when you are using such small plastic medias, they have kind of increased the surface area and for the treatment, which is like, you know, kind of a very good substitution to the hay media that we see in the biochemical reactors, right? So after that, the water gets from the treated and gets to the effluent tank. And from the effluent tank, if you can see these are the two anaerobic MBBR tanks. From there, it goes to the effluent tank. Then it is also going through an ultrafiltration skid. Now, this ultrafiltration skid has been kind of been, they have been using it as just to see as an experimental part, like how much more reduction in selenium they can get. As such, the MBBR tanks are very good and sufficient in removing about 80% of selenium. But ultrafiltration skid kind of gives more support to it in further reducing it, right? And all these tanks are kind of the backwashers, the return tanks, they are all for this regeneration of the membranes in the ultrafiltration skid. And then the water is getting discharged. Now, right now, the water is getting discharged to the main sediment pond only because this is a pilot scale plant. Now, another thing is that if we see the benefits, so the benefits are the space saving. MBBR systems, they can save space. It's a lot of space that is being saved right now only. And they are also kind of enclosed systems. You need not have them open to the climate. And MBBR systems, they can save space. It's a crucial when you talking about a small total carbon footprint. They are able to achieve a small form factor using a single tank for the entire process. The increased surface area for the microorganism, it is provided by the floating media, the floating plastic media, and it reduces the MBBR system's footprint. It's a lower maintenance. The process is common in other wastewater systems like backwashing or membrane cleaning. They are non-existent in MBBR. So the only backwashing and everything we were doing were for the ultrafiltration skid, not for the MBBR system. And efficient. When efficiency matters to the organization, then MBBR is a way forward because MBBRs are being like currently when we are looking at the pilot scale, it has been having more efficiency in removing the selenium. BCR was found to be only 40 to 60%, where there is an 80% reduction in MBBR has been found. The current challenges in the pilot scale plant. So the current, this is the actual plant you can see in the image. And if I can show you, these particular tanks are the anaerobic MBBR tanks. These are the two main tanks where the plastic floating media is there. Now, the current challenges is that you need a continuous need of the monitoring. So you need expert people to monitor the system continuously. We have also found that the plastic media was kind of getting clogged into the discharge lines, and usually it shouldn't because it's kind of floating, right? But it was kind of getting sometimes stuck into the outlet line. Now what our maintenance team has done, they have kind of put a mesh kind on the outside the outlet so that the plastic media doesn't get flowed out with the outlet flow. And the influent water that kind of needs a temperature of 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. The temperature below 10 degrees Celsius will not kill the bacteria, but it will significantly slow their growth, synthesis, and biochemical activity, therefore negatively impacting the treatment rate of selenium and nitrate nitrogen. And currently a heat exchanger is being used. So currently a shell and tube type heat exchanger is being used in this pilot plant, whereas for the fully constructed plant, they have gone for a plate and frame type of heat exchanger, because when you go for larger, huge systems, they said that, the shell and tube could be more like becoming, it will be like you have to clean it more, will require more maintenance compared to a plate and frame. That has been the difference they have made in the newer big plant. And when we say maintaining the temperature, see what I mean, the temperatures at this site, they usually go to -52 as well. So when the outside temperature is -52, even this particular enclosure has some limitations in spite of all the insulation. The temperature drops here very quickly. Now, finally, the overview of the mine wastewater treatment. Sorry. With the advent of mining industry, the water bodies of the surrounding areas have shown increased concentration of metal elements, and heavy metal water pollution has become a very severe problem in a country like Canada, one of the world's largest mining industry. There are a lot of mining industries out here. It's not only the coal, they have the uranium, they have the gold and diamond mining site as well, copper mine sites as well. So water treatment has become a very dire need for these places. Canadian mining activities contribute significantly to heavy metal pollution. For example, in British Columbia, it is estimated that there are 1 million tons of waste rock and 950,000 tons of tailings produced per day, for a total of 650 million tons annually. There are many active coal mining sites in British Columbia which generate large volumes of wastewater containing heavy metals such as selenium, nitrate, TSS, and phosphorus from mine site blast and other mining operation. Usually when we are blasting these sites, that's the main reason why, most of these metals come around. The Brule mine is authorized to discharge effluent from the main sediment pond under the regulatory reporting requirements outlined in the effluent permit. That's the permit that has been issued by the British Columbia Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy. With stringent rising environmental concerns, the mine is shifting towards newer technology to treat water. With the progress being made in the pilot plant, a full-scale plant is under construction on site, and a similar plant is also being constructed in the newly acquired mine site of Quintet. And as I said earlier, they have also acquired a new site of Peace River. They are going to construct a similar plant even there as well. So these are the regulations that govern the BCR system. So these are the regulations when we are constructing a BCR. These are kind of the regulations that one goes through. Health and Safety Reclamation Code, Dam Safety Regulation. Then there is also the British Columbia Mines Acts, which is kind of, you have to go through it even when you are operating the plant. Environmental Code of Practice for Metal Mines, Effluent Permit, which is like a Bible to us every day. When we are treating the water, we have to ensure that it meets the permit requirements of PE 17679 and Environmental Management Act. So some fun facts about this particular site, not only this site, all the sites in the British Columbia, you will always come across a black bear or maybe a grizzly bear, a deer. So this particular deer, if you are seeing, this is a BCR reactor 2. This is actually a BCR reactor 2. So deer will always be on here. It has also been observed that these deer, many times they walk on this particular hay as well. The hay, so it's not like water is totally up to the mark. The pond is having the hay layer on the top. These deers can even walk on that particular hay as well. It kind of maintains that buoyancy. So, but of course, ensuring that it doesn't drink that water. And then this one is the fox, which was visible to me near the biochemical reactor 1. So he is just like in search of something. So all these photographs have been taken by me on the site. Maximum temperature recorded is 27 to 32 degrees Celsius. Minimum temperature recorded is -42 to -452 degrees Celsius as well. Currently, it's -30 out here. So site is home to black bears, grizzly bears, foxes, deers, and amazing flora and fauna. The flora and fauna is thriving like anything in the summertime. And these are my references. I would like to thank Dr. Yogesh sir and Dr. Hiral sir for giving me this opportunity to present on this platform. And I'm open to the question and answers right now. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, madam.
Yes, my
I
first
really
question, ma'am. I only have one question. That during those -30 or -50 degrees centigrade, does this
Hmm.
water body freeze up? How do you perform the daily
Yeah.
practices? I mean, for
Oh, a
aeration or
very
for
tough task.
anything like that.
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's a very tough task. That's a very good question also, because that's the main question which kind of, s- ca- realizes us like why these treatments are becoming obsolete now. So the very first thing, it's not getting fully frozen. The snow, it kinds of stays on the top layer, which you could see in that particular image. It stays on the top layer, and it's kind of makes an insulated barrier kind of. So there is hay, then there is a mixed media. The water is somewhere in the mixed media. So again, on top of the hay, you have now the snow. So snow is getting restricted on that particular hay. It kind of creates an insulation sheet. There has been reported like many of the bioreactors in the North American regions, wherever there is a problem of this snow, they have also been constructed underground to completely avoid this whole factor of frozen areas thing. So the lines which are the influent and the discharge line, they are just below the ground, so they have been constructed below the frost level area, so even that is not getting frozen. What I have found is like while working, sometimes like some of the pipelines are exposed and not all of the pipelines have been like insulated. They have only ensured right now that the discharge and the inlet line is getting kind of, not even the discharge is fully insulated. The inlet line is being getting traced, heat traced. So as you had seen in that particular image, the line from the MSP, it's the inflow line, it goes on the surface. It goes on the surface and then goes underground into the biochemical reactor. So it's all heat traced. So even if it's on the ground, even if it gets covered with the snow, it's not getting frozen or anything. But there is some lines which are kind of getting outflow from these reactors. They are going through the hill and they are exposed also in some parts. That's the places where you kind of have a tendency that they can get frozen. But sometimes what they have done, we actually saw it on site that the maintenance guy was running with the heaters in order to defrost the line. So the problem is maybe the industry, they were not so much particular about treating this water in the first place few years back, and it was like all okay, like it will go on. But now when the regulations is kind of becoming so stringent every day that the government doesn't want even a slight increase in the selenium content in the river, they have become like more and more conscious. And they are also making current efforts on this particular BCR as well. They're kind of getting insulated pipes. Lot of repair work was done this time in this summer. So there is a tendency, like as you said rightly, that what happens if it's like so cold. So that's the thing. Like the BCR is functioning properly. It ensures that like the cold is not affecting it. But yeah, the aeration pond side, the top layer is kind of getting frozen. So the maintenance team is always on site to ensure that the things get running. That's the reason the maintenance team is like it's highly in demand. And the thing is, the maintenance team, they have a very tough job. They have to ensure that the plant keeps running during these cold climate conditions, and
And the
that's the reason they're
microbes
going
do
for
tend
this.
to survive. The microbes do tend to survive those critical
They kind
temperatures.
of, yeah, because the insulation has become on the top. They have a reduced performance though.
Okay.
So we have seen that
Okay.
the water is not getting so much well treated in this particular season right
Winters.
now. Yeah,
Okay.
winters is tough out here. So, and
Okay.
that's the reason why they are going for this MBBR now, because even the new plant, it has been constructed all indoors and inside. So there's like very less exposure to the outside world.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for
Thank
this
you, sir.
informative session and clearing my doubt. Any more questions? You can please raise your hand. I will unmute those participants. I've already unmuted few of the participants who have raised the question in the chat box.
Yeah.
Yes, Abhay sir, you can. Manoj Jain sir, Piyush Kumar Pathak sir, you can please ask your questions.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for a nice session.
Yes.
In this particularly this BCR,
Mhm.
does the performance get sort of depleted as the time passes because lime getting consumed and all?
Yes, that's the reason why almost every year we are kind of, not they don't do it every year, but at least once in 2 years, they have to change this whole particular media. Recently, it has happened in the month of, I should say, somewhere around October. And we were nearing the winter time, and they immediately, like when they saw that the whole media had got kind of consumed, it had all become very bad. They first tried to churn it to check whether this media has, like, is it still good condition or not. They said that we have to remove it, and they had to almost spend 1 million something just to get everything on the site, that particular hay media. And now they first we have to remove all that, and then they kind of put a new media. So the media is getting kind of utilized. It's not like a one time expenditure that you just brought all the hay to the media, mixed media, to the site, and it will stay there for at least 10 years. Nothing like that. It has to be continuously. It's not getting regenerated by itself also. So you have to bring the new media, and also take away the old media, and also get that old media disposed in a right manner.
My second question is, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not aware of the properties of selenium, but
Mhm.
some amphibian metals like zinc, which are soluble in alkaline medium also. I mean, how do
Yeah.
because there's a lot of lime there, which can give
Mhm.
you a lot of alkalinity. How
Yes,
is
yes.
that being addressed in this? Particularly
So,
amphibians like zinc. Yeah.
yeah, I think we don't actually go for a very deep detailed study on that particular thing. But yes, the lime area has been provided just to ensure that, that acidity gets removed. As you rightly said, the alkalinity is kind of being increased. But I think what happens is whenever they are kind of removing like the upper part, the media as well, they also ensure that the lime area is kind of, retained. If nothing, they will kind of replenish it again. But so far they usually don't bother with that much, because it's a selenium which has been of the highest target out here. They find that that is the, having higher concentrations in whatever the mine water that we are receiving, because I guess probably it's an open pit mine. It's not something like an underground mine. So the only thing is the blasting is happening on the top, and I guess that's the reason selenium is in the higher content, and they're always afraid of that, to not exceed. But yeah, all of the rest of the, so we have water testing happening almost every day. Every week the water is being going to proper lab sites and being analyzed. And in case if they find that other proportions or metals are also increasing, they will just ensure that this whole particular layer of limestone hay media is kind of again replenished, again kind of new is material is made to the side, brought to the side.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to thanks for the wonderful session first.
Yeah.
My question is, what kind of food or nutrients we need to add in BCR system for the sustenance of microbes?
Uh, Not anything specific. That's the reason, like, biochemical reactors are very good at that. So you are providing all the natural ingredients. That is your hay, sawdust. All these are like readily available media, like whatever. So it's like basically whatever kind of, I should say in a local language, is the grass you are providing. So it's like everything which the microbes, kind of decompose in a regular day basis. That's the particular media. We are not adding any chemicals to it. That's the best part of a biochemical reactor. So all the food that we are providing is the mixed media here that I have given you. Kind of, it has to be in a right composition. So the sawdust, the hay, all this has to be in a proper composition that has to be provided as a food to these microbes. That's the only thing. That's why BCRs are very simplistic in design. Yeah. I hope that
Okay.
answers your question. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, and another question is, can we incorporate any aquatic plants to absorb selenium from effluent?
Uh, they haven't thought about this thing. The problem is, if you see like the biochemical reactor, you are filling the limestone, then you are providing all that mixate, which is kind of hole in the surface, like it's being completely covering all the surface in your biochemical reactor. This is not something like the water is getting some exposure. Water is continuously getting some media. So I don't know if where they can keep the plants, that will be like, because I understand what you mean is like sometimes, it's like imagining the aeration pond, for example. Now the aeration pond can have probably some plants at the bottom, but the problem is there is lot of sediments that is being released from this water. So a lot of sedimentation is getting in the aeration pond. There is some space, but there is a lot of sedimentation getting accumulated here. So plants will become ineffective in the longer time. It's very difficult, and I think that's the reason why nobody even like I haven't heard also of being it is utilized. But this kind of idea gives you, because if you see the natural water bodies, you always have plants all around them, right? That's the reason how everything is getting filtered out finally in the rivers. So this idea makes sense, but for the BCR, it's a very difficult idea.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
This side, Dr. Piyush Pathak is speaking. I want to
Yeah.
know what is the role of the water henjit for the absorption of the selenium material from the water. Can
Sorry.
it is possible to absorb the selenium material by water henjit?
For by water?
Water
I'm-
henjit,
what is that exactly? Sorry, I didn't.
algae, green algae.
Algae. Okay. So you are
Can
saying that by algae, if we can, get the selenium kind of reduced.
okay.
Yeah. Okay. A very good one. I like that question as well. You know the reason? This particular area, it hardly gets any sun. So it's like we are always under the clouds. So as you said,
We are
right, this particular area.
distance
Sorry.
near river Ganga as well as the river Yamuna.
Yeah.
Also, they hold that water and treat by water henjit. That is green algae.
So that's the thing, that's a very best part that you have said. All these tropical countries that is getting a whole amount of sun. Like lot of our problems, I tell you, in India is being solved by sun, the good climate, the good temperature. It's like very good temperature in all seasons around in India. But whereas this country, it's like completely cold throughout the year. To be really honest, even the summer is only seeing a 25-degree, and that too few days. Like I can literally count on my hand like number of days I may have such good temperatures in the summertime. So what happens is that that's the major reason out here also. The water treatment kind of gets impacted with also the regular temperature outside. For all these microbial sustenance, algae sustenance, you need a good temperature out there. You need a sun. The sun doesn't come out most of the days here. So that's the reason, like, as you said, that India has got a lot of, different kind of water treatment system as well, which are very effective. You have a slow solar energy that is so effective. Whereas because of the lack of the sun out here, that's a major problem in all of the systems out here. You need to ensure that all the pipelines are, always insulated and everything, because climate here
Okay,
gets
okay, ma'am.
very worse. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this
Thank
answering.
you, sir.
Second question is related with the American Standard Testing Method,
Mhm.
ASTMD, and Indian Standard Method. For water testing parameters, what will be the difference between them?
I am not too sure about that. I have not okay. What we usually do on the site is like we are utilizing um, a kind of a device which kind of gives you, direct pH, ORP standard values. So we kind of do the analysis just to ensure that the
Okay.
the compliance is being made, but we don't go by some very basic, because that is what is happening in the actual laboratories. So laboratories are quite far from here. The water actually goes to them. We collect the samples and it goes to the main laboratories which are in the cities again to the nearby town, because it's a very remote location. It goes to a nearby town, and that's why we always get the results in the next week. That's another major problem. Hence, we have to ensure that every day we are also kind of analyzing the water every day to ensure that we get on the spot, values. So we don't go by the any particular kind of the ASTM guidelines or anything like that. So
Thank
sorry,
you.
I won't be able to, yeah.
They,
justify
they,
my-
they, Dr.
Thank you.
Piyush, they have only they have minor differences in their methodology as compared to ASTM, AFA, as well as IS. If you compare those methods, then there are only few parameters in which they differ a bit. Rest of the things are almost the same. If you can refer all those three methods, then they are almost the same apart from few parameters.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anybody would like to ask any question?
Oh, yeah, I think there is one, Mr. Manoj Jain has asked that out of the environmental audit context, if these zoological species are observed at mine site in India, mining EC may get cancelled. I'll
Yes,
add
madam.
another.
That is the Gujarat, India.
Yeah, I
If
get
you
it.
treat the
I am from
effluent
Gujarat.
that
Yeah.
if you treat the effluent that much too good, then you may not have the problem. You will be having good marks over the compliances, but the surrounding person may not get the EC. They will be told that within 10 kilometers you are having endangered species, so you will not get EC.
That's the funny part. Out here, you have the whole wildlife kind of, thriving on here. So sometimes we are also like, we should also drink this water. I guess it's very so much clean. All the wildlife is out here, and this is out of context, but you won't believe that it is said out here that we are kind of in their homes. We have to respect them. There's no barricade of any sort here made to keep these animals away. We will always be coming across them every day. So it's like we have entered their territory. That's kind of the
Exactly.
image out here. Yeah.
So that is the main reason of sustainability or whatever we can say.
Yes. But it's a very difficult sustainability. Trust me, you don't want to come across the bear. Yeah.
Okay, I suppose we can conclude over here because all the questions have been answered very well by you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this
Thank you.
information sharing session. And any more questions from any participant? So we hereby conclude.
Malvika, you have addressed very nicely. Very nice presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Happy to see your progress.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you for your blessing. Thank you, everybody, for giving me this opportunity and time to listen. And I'm very happy to give you some aspect of this part of the world. It just gives you some enlightenment. Like, it's not very discussed every day, but people in India can understand what's the benefit of having such a good climate, I should say. It's very good out there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Vera, sir.
All the
Okay, bye.
yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So all the participants, I have an information to pass on, important information. Please note that the session which was to be conducted on 8th of February, I repeat, the session which was to be conducted on 8th of February, just give me a moment. I shall stop the recording. Give me a moment, please.